Imagine giving birth to your first child and barely a few weeks after, someone you just met disappeared into thin air with your baby. What would you do to get your new baby back? Sit tight as I share a story based on a true life event of Alero and her baby and all the events that unfolded. Ikponke arrived at the hospital and quickly went to the back of the car to help his wife Alero. Alero's water broke. Her baby was pressing hard as it was ready to be born. Ikponke carefully lifted his wife from the back seat and rushed into the hospital shouting for help. "We need a doctor! The baby is coming!" The nurses hurried over with a stretcher. They took Alero to the first available room to prepare her for delivery. The doctor was called in immediately. After a quick examination, he said Alero needed an emergency C-section because the baby was in a breech position. Ikponke was very worried. "I don't care how you do it. I just want them to be okay. Please be quick." The nurses quickly wheeled Alero into the operating room and Ikponke waited anxiously in the reception area. An hour later, the doctor came out of the operating room. Ikponke rushed towards the doctor. "Congratulations, both mom and baby are doing well and you can see them soon," the doctor said. Ikponke was relieved. The nurse took him to the recovery room where Alero and their new baby girl were resting. Ikponke kissed Alero and gently took the baby into his arms. Tears filled his eyes as he looked at the most beautiful and calm baby he had ever seen. He held her close to his heart and breathed a sigh of relief. As Ikponke and Alero settled on the small hospital bed with their new baby, they heard shouting from a few rooms away. A woman named Lola was screaming, "Not again! Not again! What did you do to my baby? She cannot die! My baby cannot die!" Lola, who was staying a few rooms down the hall, had just lost her baby a few minutes after delivery. She cried endlessly and would not accept any comfort. In the days that followed, Lola struggled deeply. She refused to eat or talk to anyone. Her grief was overwhelming. She had already lost 2 babies to stillbirth. Alero and Ikponke learned about Lola's story from a nurse and felt a great deal of sadness for her. When Alero was discharged from the hospital, her family threw a big surprise welcome home party for her and the baby. The elders took turns praying for the baby. Alero and Ikponke named their baby Idong. She was a great comfort to them after their first pregnancy ended in a miscarriage. Everyone was happy and the house was filled with joy and laughter. When Idong was just a few weeks old, wrapped warmly in a pink blanket, her mother, Alero, sat beside her, watching her tiny daughter with a heart full of love. Alero could not stop smiling. She felt so lucky to have Idong. Ikponke walked into the room. He saw Alero gazing at Idong and smiled. "She's perfect, isn't she?" Ikponke said, his voice full of pride. Alero nodded, feeling tears of happiness welling up in her eyes. "She is everything we ever dreamt of." That day, they were taking Idong to the hospital. She had been running a fever, even though it did not seem too serious. Alero and Ikponke were worried. They were new parents and they wanted to make sure their baby was healthy. They packed the baby's things, a diaper bag with bottles, diapers and a few toys, and got ready to leave. As they walked out of the house, Alero felt a little anxiety. "I feel like something is not right," Alero said to Ikponke. "Everything will be fine. Idong is healthy. It's just a fever and it's not serious." Ikponke responded to calm her down. The hospital was busy when they arrived. Nurses and doctors rushed around and the waiting room was full of people. Alero and Ikponke sat down, holding Idong close. Alero tried to calm her nerves, but the noise and the smell of the hospital made her very uneasy. Lola, the lady that had lost her baby when Idong was born, she came in. She was bleeding and was immediately admitted into the hospital. Testing and treatment began right away for both Idong and Lola. Since the hospital was small and very busy, Alero had to share a room with Lola. Lola started talking to Alero. Lola was very kind and she knew the right things to say. She made Alero feel comfortable and earned her trust. The nurses gave Lola some medicine to control her bleeding, but they also needed to watch her overnight. So both women spent the night in the same room. Alero told Ikponke to go home for the night, since Lola would keep her company. After all the testing and medication, baby Idong was brought back to the room. Her fever had broken and the medicine made her calm and deeply asleep. Alero held her for a while before going to sleep herself. She placed her baby beside her and fell asleep. Lola pretended to be asleep but watched Alero closely. When Alero was asleep, Lola quietly got up, tiptoed towards Alero to confirm if she was deeply asleep. She even touched her, but Alero did not wake up. Alero was exhausted and deeply asleep. Lola tiptoed to the door and peeked multiple times to see if the nurses were there. At about 2:30 a.m. in the morning, the hospital was quiet and Lola noticed that the nurses were asleep. She quickly picked up the baby, who was sound asleep, and walked right out of the hospital. She got into her car and drove away. At the gate, the security guard stopped her to ask a few questions. Lola stayed calm and told the guards that she was going home to get a few things for her mom. The guard let her through, not knowing that there was a stolen baby sleeping peacefully in the trunk of the car. Lola drove all night to get out of the city and headed to her grandmother's home far away in the north. Both Lola and baby Idong were gone. When Alero woke up, she couldn't feel her baby close to her body. She tried to pull the baby close to her, but it was an empty space. She opened her eyes to check and Idong was not on the bed. She rushed to the reception, hoping the nurses had her baby, but the nurses were asleep. Alero screamed, demanding to know where her baby was. The nurses, shocked by her loud noise, woke up. "Where is my baby? Where did you put my baby?" Alero screamed. The nurses were surprised and confused. "Your baby was with you in your room the last time we checked," they said. They ran back to the room to look for baby Idong, but Lola was also missing. They froze. "Where is your roommate?" they asked Alero. "I don't know," Alero replied. "She was here when I fell asleep." Idong was gone, and nobody knew where she was. Panic set in. Alero's heart raced. They realized something terrible had happened. Her baby, her precious Idong was missing. The happiness she felt hours before was replaced with dread. Her world crumbled. She did not know what to do. Overcome with shock, Alero collapsed on the ground. The nurses quickly lifted her onto the bed and called Ikponke to come back to the hospital. Alero's heart pounded as she and Ikponke raced down the hospital hallway, calling out for their baby. They pushed the nurses and the doctors aside, desperate to find Idong. Finally, they reached a security desk where Alero explained what had happened to the security. "I was asleep with my baby, but now I cannot find her and I cannot find my roommate. Please help us." The security guard said, "We need to check the cameras." They rushed into a small room filled with monitors showing different areas of the hospital. The guy rewinded the footage and they all watched in tense silence. On one of the screens, they saw Lola carrying Idong down the hallway. Alero's breath caught in her throat as she watched Lola turn the corner. But then, something strange happened. Instead of heading towards the nurse in the reception, Lola exited through the side door. The guard paused the video. "That exit goes to the parking lot," he said. "Let me check the parking lot camera." He looked at another screen and saw Lola put the baby in the trunk of a car to drive off. They even saw when she spoke with the security guard at the gate before driving out of the hospital premises. Ikponke felt his stomach drop. "What is happening? Where is our baby?" he asked. His voice was rising in panic. The guard informed Ikponke that the baby was not in the hospital. The guard picked up the phone and called for help, and within minutes, the hospital was on high alert. Police officers began searching the surrounding areas. Alero held on to Ikponke, tears streaming down her face. How could this happen? How could anyone take our baby? The minutes felt like hours as they waited, hoping for any news. Alero's mind raced with horrible thoughts. What if they never find Idong? What if something terrible had already happened to her? Alero tried to push the thoughts away, but they kept coming back. The police officer approached them. "We've put out an alert," he said. "We're doing everything we can to find your daughter. I need you both to stay here and give us all the information you can remember about Lola." Alero and Ikponke struggled to remember every detail. Alero described Lola's clothes, her hair, her kind smile. But the more she tried to remember, the more everything blurred together. It felt like a nightmare. As the officers took note, Alero broke down, sobbing uncontrollably as the reality of what had happened sank in. Ikponke held Alero tightly, trying to stay strong for both of them. But inside, he was falling apart. After the interview, the officer stood up. "We have a team searching the area, and we've alerted every hospital and clinic in the city. We're doing everything we can to find your daughter." As the detective left, Alero leaned into Ikponke, tears spilling down her cheek. "What if we never see her again, Ikponke?" she whispered. Ikponke wrapped his arms around her, trying to hold back his own tears. "We have to believe they'll find her. We have to believe that she'll come back to us." Hours turned into days, and the search for Idong showed no sign of slowing down. The police were working round the clock. The hospital had been searched from top to bottom. Every possible witness was interviewed, and the footage from every security camera had been reviewed. But the mysterious patient, Lola, had vanished without a trace, taking Idong with her. As Alero and Ikponke returned home, Alero spent hours sitting in Idong's room, holding on to her blanket, unable to bring herself to leave the room. Ikponke tried to keep things together. He spent his days on the phone with the police, following every lead, no matter how small. But each time, the answer was the same: nothing. The days continued to drag on, each one more painful than the last. Their friends and family came by to offer support. They brought food and they sat with Alero and Ikponke, but nothing could fill the void in their heart. Each time the phone rang, Alero's heart would skip, only to crash when it was not about Idong. Just when it seemed like all hope was lost, the phone rang one afternoon. It was the police officer. "We might have a lead," he said. Alero and Ikponke were at the police station within minutes, their hearts pounding with a mixture of hope and fear. They went into the small conference room where the police officer sat with a stack of papers in front of him. "We have information," the police officer said as they sat down. "A woman matching the description of Lola was seen in a small town far away from here. She was with a baby that fits Idong's description." Alero's heart raced. Where is she now?" she asked, barely able to keep her voice steady. "We're not sure," the police officer replied. "The tip was from days ago, but we have sent officers to check it out, and we're also coordinating with the local police to expand the search in that area." The next few hours were agonizing. They sat by the phone waiting for any word from the officer. Each minute felt like eternity, and there was a lot of tension in the room. They barely spoke to each other. They were lost in their thoughts and fears. Finally, the phone rang. Alero snatched it up, her heart pounding. "Hello?" It was the officer. "We have confirmed that the woman is not the person we're looking for. I'm so sorry." Oh, Alero's world crumbled. She could barely hold the phone as the weight of the news sank in. Ikponke took the phone from her, thanking the police officer before hanging up. He turned to Alero and comforted her. Alero felt as though the floor had been ripped out from under her. All the hope she had been clinging to evaporated into thin air. She collapsed into Ikponke's arms, sobbing uncontrollably. Her heart shattered once more. Ikponke held her, tears streaming down his own face. "We'll keep searching," he said. "We won't give up, Alero. We cannot give up." As the days passed, Alero and Ikponke barely spoke to each other. They were lost in grief. All that mattered was finding Idong, but each day that passed without news made them feel hopeless. One morning, as Alero sat at the kitchen table staring into space, there was a knock on the door. Ikponke opened it to find their neighbor standing there. She was holding a pan of rice, her eyes full of sympathy. "I just wanted to check on you two," the neighbor said. "We're all praying for Idong to come back home safe, and I brought you some food." Alero managed to smile. "I haven't cooked in a long time. Thank you for bringing food." The neighbor asked Alero for more pictures of Idong because the neighborhood wanted to print flyers and posters and paste them everywhere. Alero brought a box filled with photos of Idong, pictures from the day she was born, her first bath, her first smile. Every photo was a memory. Alero spread the photos out on the floor and picked the ones that showed Idong's face most clearly. On Saturday morning, the pastor was invited to the gathering to pray before the kickoff. The whole community spent all Saturday putting posters on every pole, roundabout, fence. They drove across the city, handing out flyers, talking to anyone that would listen. They went to the shopping centers, put posters on the market, the bus stations, hoping somebody might have seen something. Idong's face and Lola's description was everywhere. A week after, something unexpected happened. It was late in the evening. As they sat down for dinner, the phone rang. As Alero picked up in panic, there was a pause on the other end. Then a slow voice spoke. "Is this Idong's mother?" "Yes, this is Alero. Who is this? Do you know where my daughter is?" The voice paused again, and then the stranger spoke more clearly. I don't want to get involved, but I have seen something. I think it might be your daughter." Alero's heart began to race. "Please tell me what you saw. Where is she?" Her voice trembling. The stranger paused once more, then said, "There is a woman on my street. No one saw when she was pregnant, but now she has a baby. I saw the flyers with Idong's picture. I think this is your baby." Alero's breath caught in her throat. "Where is this? Please tell me everything." Alero wrote down the address, her hand shaking. "Thank you," she whispered. As soon as she hung up, Alero turned to Ikponke. "We have to go. We have to go there now." Ikponke was already grabbing his keys. "I'll call the officer on the way," he said. "We need to let him know about this." They rushed out of their house, their hearts pounding as they drove across the city. The address the stranger had given was far away, but they did not care. When they arrived at the address, they parked a little way down the street, not wanting to draw attention. The police officers were already there waiting for them. The officer approached them. "We're going to check it out," he said. "Stay here for now. We'll let you know what we find." Alero and Ikponke nodded and waited. The wait felt long and very painful. They were nervous and anxious because they wanted the nightmare to end. Finally, the officer came out of the house, walking towards them with a sad expression. Alero's heart sank as she saw the look on his face. "It's not Idong," he said gently. "The baby inside is not her. I'm so sorry." The world seemed to crumble around them once again. Alero leaned into Ikponke, tears streaming down her face. They had been so close to believing this nightmare might finally be over. But instead, they were left with the same emptiness. The days following the false lead were some of the hardest days for Alero and Ikponke. The community's support remained strong, but the police were getting tired. One evening, there was a knock at the door. Ikponke opened it to find a young woman standing there, looking nervous but determined. She introduced herself as Jumoke, a reporter who had been following Idong's story. "I have been seeing the posters everywhere," Jumoke said. "I'm here to help you. I believe that getting more media attention might bring in new information and witnesses. I can get a lot of TV stations around the country to cover the story, she said. Alero and Ikponke were surprised. They did not even think about news coverage. They invited Jumoke into the house. She took out her camera and notebook and started to interview them, hoping it would bring in more leads. In the interview, Alero described all of Idong's features, while Ikponke talked about all the things they had done to find their daughter. Jumoke promised to air the segment on the local news and share it with national media outlets. The next day, as they were following up on leads, they noticed an influx of new tips. Jumoke's interview had gone viral and Idong's story was everywhere. A phone call came in and it was the officer. His voice was filled with excitement. "We have a significant development," said the officer. "After the news segment aired, we received a tip from a woman. The woman described how she always sees a lot of cars drive in and out of her neighbor's house. Big black tinted cars bring in a lot of different children, especially at night. She also noticed that some babies were brought in among the batch of children that just came in." Alero's heart raced. Where did she see the child? The officer explained, "We're checking out the lead now. I'll keep you updated." Alero and Ikponke were filled with a mix of hope and anxiety. The tip was promising. They spent the day waiting for further updates, their minds racing with what if and possibilities. By late afternoon, the officer called again. The neighbor matched the description that the lady gave, and we're closing in on them and following the lead. I'll let you know as soon as we have more information. Ikponke and Alero felt a renewed sense of hope. The media exposure had helped generate valuable tips, and they were closer to finding Idong. As they prepared for breakfast the following morning, Ikponke's phone rang. It was the officer, and Alero's heart skipped when she answered. "We have made some progress," the officer said. "Our team has identified the woman who brings in a lot of children into her compound. She's connected to a network of child trafficking that we have been tracking. We're currently in the process of locating her and checking if she has any connection to Idong. We're also working with federal agents to trace her connection. It's a delicate situation, but we're making progress," the police officer explained. Alero felt a surge of hope. "What do we do now?" "For now, I need you to stay available," the officer instructed. "We might need you to identify the woman if we find her." The search for Idong was gaining momentum, and they could feel that the breakthrough they had been waiting for was near. The day was filled with tense anticipation. Alero and Ikponke spent their time waiting for the phone call. Later in the afternoon, the officer called again. "We have found the woman. She's currently being questioned, and we have discovered that she has been in contact with several individuals involved in child trafficking. We're following up on these connections, and we believe they might lead us to Idong," the officer said. Alero and Ikponke were on the edge of their seat. "Do you think we're close to finding her?" Alero asked. "We're hopeful," the officer replied. "The tips are very true and good quality, and we're doing everything we can to piece together the information. I'll keep you updated with any new development." As the day turned into evening, Alero and Ikponke continued to wait for the news. The uncertainty was almost unbearable. Just after dinner, the officer called again. "We have a lead on a location where the traffickers might be holding children. We're coordinating with the nearest police station and planning to raid the location. Stay by your phone. We might need you to identify Idong if she's found." Alero and Ikponke were so anxious and excited. The possibility of finding Idong was now a reality. They waited in silence, couldn't sleep all night, their hearts pounding as they hoped for the best. The next morning, the phone rang again. The officer's voice was filled with excitement. "We have conducted the raid and found several children and babies. We're currently in the process of moving them to the station. I will need you two to come down to the station to help us check if Idong is here and identify her. Did Alero and Ikponke find their baby? Is baby Idong even still alive? Where is Lola? We will find out in part 2. Thank you so much for watching and thank you for subscribing to our channel. See you in the next video. Bye.